Hello everyone, my name is Vitaly Brzezinski. For this organizational change presentation, I chose DC Cook Nuclear Plant, my current place of employment. So to start, I'll give you a quick overview on what I'll be talking about. DC Cook is currently in the process of implementing a standard design process that will change the way engineering changes for plant configuration are developed, and it will change the overall structure of engineering organizations. The standard design process is in the beginning stages and hasn't been fully rolled out to the plant at this time. I chose to use Cotter's change model to address this organizational change, so provide an overview of the model. And lastly, I will talk about implementing the standard design process at DC Cook using Cotter's model. As mentioned, the standard design process will change the way in which engineering changes are developed to change plant configuration. This is an industry-wide initiative that has been derived by industry experts to increase efficiency and reduce the amount of time and resources used to develop current engineering changes. This will be a streamlined process used by all nuclear plants in the U.S. The process applies to engineering but will affect all levels of the organization. March 2017 is the initial rollout date. This is when the process will be fully introduced to the plants. All plants must be compliant to the process by July of 2017, which is only 4 months after the rollout. Some managers and supervisors have been briefed and introduced to the process, but no formal communication has been provided to individual contributors. No training has been provided at this time either. Currently, there are a number of things DC Cook expects to happen once the implementation is in full swing. As mentioned, the process will be streamlined. It will be a new process for everyone, unlike the processes that are currently in place for engineering changes. It will reduce the overall number of engineering staff. Engineering departments will be restructured to better realign with the process. Management changes will occur. Other organizations that are non-engineering will have to accept different responsibilities because the process will eliminate many of the administrative tasks engineers currently perform as part of engineering changes. To analyze how DC Cook can best manage the standard design process, I would propose using Cotter's change model. This model consists of 8 steps. Urgency for change must be established. The organization shall assemble a group with power, energy, and influence to lead the change. The organization shall develop a vision and strategy that is clear on all levels of the organization. The change vision must be communicated. People must be involved and empowered throughout the process. They must think about how to achieve change rather than resist it. Short-term wins need to be generated frequently. The organization shall consolidate their gains and produce more change. The key here is to build as much momentum as possible. And lastly, the process must be anchored in the organization. Now that we have looked at the 8 steps, let's take a look at how they can be applied for implementation of the standard design process. The urgency of the change is going to be driven by the industry. All plants will have to comply with the process and utilize it to perform changes. The level of urgency has to be clear, and the organization must understand the importance of compliance by July of 2017. The implications of not being compliant by the said date shall be clearly defined to further stress the level of urgency. DC Cook should first focus on compliance with the process and begin structural changes after they are comfortable with the new process. Structural changes should not take place until July of 2017. Step 2 brings us to coalition. Coalition should first start with engineering directors and managers, as these individuals are most familiar with the process at this time. They have the power, voice, and knowledge to encourage the change and stress the importance of success. Additionally, it would be beneficial for Cook to develop an external-internal change agent process. Bringing in external industry experts and having them team up with internal experts would create a large change effort team and provide more reinforcement for process implementation. Next, let's take a look at developing vision. The vision has been developed and communicated. The vision is implementing a more sufficient process to reduce the amount of time and resources used to complete engineering changes, but at the same time have the same amount of assurance the change will work as expected. The vision should be communicated regularly and clearly on all levels of the organization. A full implementation plan needs to be developed. This plan should contain all of the process milestones and dates the milestones are expected to complete. Benefits for all organizations need to be developed as part of the vision. People can see what's in it for them. They are more likely to support the change. Training needs must be established as part of the vision as well. With the significance of this process, being able to learn on the job is not possible with the given timeline. Moving on to step 4 of Cotter's model, let's talk about communicating the vision. Communication of what the entire process and implementation plan will look like needs to be provided, and it needs to be provided early to allow the organization appropriate time for planning on the departmental level. Structural changes should also be communicated early and supplemented with a timeline of when the changes will take place. Communicating the change once is not good enough. Communication must be continuous and provide adequate updates of where the process stands. Any additions to the process should be communicated as part of the update. It is recommended that communication be provided monthly, since the process will be in full swing within 4 months. Industry experts should be brought in to communicate the overall industry impact and benefits the process will have. Step 5 takes us to empowerment. Authority and ownership to implement the process should be given to all levels of the organization. The organization must encourage individual contributor feedback and suggestions and incorporate these things into the process implementation. After all, individual contributors will be utilizing the process the most. The success of the process depends on them. Individuals who strive to implement the change should be appointed to higher positions during this time. They will help foster an environment that focuses on how this can be done rather than how hard it is to do. Individual contributors should be encouraged to take lead and be recognized for their efforts. Seeing the changes happening, working, and recognizing the work being done by people towards achieving the change is critical. By doing so, DC Cook can generate wins during this process. Again, individuals who are going the extra mile must be recognized in order for the process to be successful. It may be beneficial to provide incentives for departments and individuals who are meeting and or exceeding expectations. In order to generate wins during the process, the results must be measurable. This can be done by evaluating the process against the initial implementation milestones. DC Cook must treat this change as a win-win situation. Step 7 takes us to consolidating gains and producing more change. Momentum must be created during the process. DC Cook must be willing to make changes to that process. When new ideas are valuable, they should be added to the process. On the other hand, if parts of the process do not add any value and they are not required, they should be removed. The implementation approach should be adjusted appropriately. If things aren't working, efforts need to be made to ensure alternatives for successful change are available. Overall implementation of the change shall be treated as a moving target to ensure individuals do not become complacent and think they've done enough to be successful. Lastly, let's take a look at Step 8 and how DC Cook can anchor the change process. A timeline shall be provided for phasing out the old process entirely. When this day comes, the old process becomes unapproved and can no longer be used. The standard design process must be part of DC Cook's core business. Plans to replace key leaders if they decide to move on shall be created. New leaders shall be appointed and they shall personify the new process. Continuous discussion of the process must be maintained. DC Cook must show employees how the new process has increased efficiency and how its continuous use will benefit the organization even more. DC Cook shall also provide visions of what the organization will look like with the process in place after 5 years. Lastly, DC Cook must ensure that structural changes are implemented to support the process and make plans to do so during this step. So we talked about the standard design process, cottage change model, and how the model can be utilized at DC Cook during the implementation of the standard design process. Thank you for listening. A list of references here as well.